Okay, Nils Mockler, 563708. I was Combat Intelligence Scout. I was assigned to the Tank Battalion, 4th Marine Division. And we were on our way to Iwo Jima, and because of the usual screw-up, because I had an intelligence spec number, I sat in on the briefing for the full bird colonels and the rest on the ship. So we were told, and they were told, that this was going to be the 2 easiest days in Marine Corps history. The island was completely wiped out. We were all set. 2 easy days, 1 day a wipe up, and then we'd get started. Okay, and here's what happened. The tropical island of Iwo Jima. You can see it stinks. It's cold at night, it's hot during the day, the ground smokes, the water is undrinkable, you can almost cook in some places, and it was completely wiped out, except for the 20,000 guys who were in these holes. So everything was wonderful. We came in, the island, it was completely covered, you can see it, and we came under these guns, so my ears haven't been quite so good since. And nothing could live through this, unless of course you had a smart general who knew how to get people to dig and had done a couple of little caves, 22 miles of tunnels hooked up. The whole end of the island was riddled. They had machine guns on track, where they could take and wheel a heavy machine gun out, fire it out through a hole no bigger than a porthole, slide it back and take it over, and we'd attack that hole and wipe out nothing, and they'd have it someplace else. But this is what it looked like. Oh, can't miss. Can't miss. So we went in on D-Day. I didn't go in, I went D1. All right. I was supposed to be out in front of the tanks walking them, which is a great job. And what happened instead? There we are. Who could stand anything like against that? This little tiny rock out in the middle of nothing, and here we are. We're going to wipe this out. And okay, now the 4th Division, we had our rank and our position stenciled on the back, and in none of the pictures and none of the pictures from the 4th Marine Division book do I see any of these stencils. So I have a feeling that somebody wiped them on this archival footage. There's one picture in the 4th Division book where they catch a guy by mistake, I think, and you can see the sharp stencil. Mine was 911, Tank Battalion, Headquarters Company, and my rank above it, so I was 911. All right, now you can see like 70,000, and this was supposed to be so easy that the Seabees came in with us. And our tanks, you see this? Just got stuck immediately. And Seabees with unarmored and completely unprotected dozers could move around. So here we are with Seabees towing us, towing the tanks, towing everything else. And these guys were ancient. Some of them were in their 30s. You know, I don't know how the hell they could walk. So here we came in, and D-Day wasn't a walk in the park, but it was nice and easy. Everything went smoothly. Came in, they were piling on, got right up by Moyotama Airport on the first day, and just everything was almost on schedule, almost up to the 01 line, and then the shit hit the fan. And they started hitting the beach, not too much. So we were bringing in gasoline and munitions and you name it, and piling it up because they weren't really hurting us too much. And they had these big mortars. They were missing and going out into the water. And then towards the end of the afternoon, they weren't missing anymore. And the stuff that we had on shore was getting pretty well blown up. And the guys were getting killed. First of all, a few at a time, and then few hundred at a time. And most of the stuff we had was not really suitable for this island, but again, it was going to be a piece of cake. We're going to walk, just nothing to it. So we came in, and now this is what you call a beach. These are terraces, and that's not sand. It's as heavy as sand, not really too bad, but you're like wading through it almost like mud. It doesn't stick to your shoes. So here we're coming back for the 50th reunion. So you got a bunch of guys, my God, ancient, like pushing 70. Remember, we were 18, 19 years old. Now, a little shot back in time. And when the young Marines that they assigned to come and babysit us on the 50th anniversary, they look at this bunch of old guys, and they were going to start trying to help us up on the trucks. And you can imagine what happened after the first guy got his hand bitten off. They didn't try to help us on the truck. They just stood there praying, not on my watch. Don't let him fall. Here we are back in 45. And there's Suribachi. And right where those ships were, that's where the young Marines brought in their wonderful new boat and their wonderful new trucks. And they pulled it up, and the wonderful new trucks came out and immediately got stuck. Just like that. Almost in that same spot. Down at, I think it was Green Beach, but I'm not sure. As far away from Blue as they could get. Blue was the bitch. That's where the 4th went in. And yes, you know, some of the rifle companies took over 100% casualties. All right? And yeah, the Jeep is not in the best of shape anymore. We came back with 1 tank out of a tank battalion. I don't know how that happened, that we still had that. But they had mines, and then they had mines on top of mines. They had mines that would go off on the first shot. They had mines that would let you go over it 10 times and then go. And then they had someone who would just go when they felt like it. Here is beautiful Suribachi. They were up there. They could look right down our throats. Okay? And, yeah. And there really wasn't too much up there. They had some artillery stuff, but they couldn't do any tunnels up there because it's fairly close to being a live sulfur volcano. So, okay, now you dig in this crap and it would cave in on you. And you see these guys crawling through there? Going back up, we did pretty much the same thing, except we were 50 years older. One of the guys walking with 2 of the heavy-duty canes, we all took barf bags from the planes to fill them with the sand. And this one guy picked up about 30 pounds in a pack and carried it all day long. And it was a long day. I know it was about 30 pounds because I put it up on the luggage rack for him when we got on the planes. All right? And each time we'd think it was just a cave. And yeah, that's the way to move around. So, yeah. He was fish in a barrel and we were the fish. And you can't get the smell. Now, this early on it couldn't have been too bad, but after the bodies began to rot, the smell was really terrible. They hadn't planned on much of a cemetery, but graves registration came in and they were burying the bodies, and then they were shelling the cemetery. The Japanese were shelling the cemetery, and they would go back and pick up what they could and put it together with a dog tag and hope. And some of the bodies had been out in the sun for a few days before they were buried, and then after they'd been shelled a couple of times, and you have burned rotten flesh, and the taste stays on your tongue forever. And these guys, of course, were the targets. Guy with a flamethrower. He couldn't move, and they wanted to get him. So, yeah. This is going to be the walk in the park. You don't want to be in a park like this. And So this is what hell looks like. And this is the back, and this is the entrance, I believe, to the Japanese hospital. You can see they were pretty well organized. They had everything. They had one room that could take 500 guys at a time comfortably. And yeah, this is from Suribachi. This is from the, and you can see the LST, whatever they call them now. And that road there, that's a 10-minute walk up from the beach up to Suribachi. I know, because I walked it. I wasn't even 70 yet, not quite. And all of us down to the beach and pick up that, what passes for sand. And the young Marines watched us crawling up those terraces, and I complimented them on how quickly they came up, and they said, God, we were watching you guys. You know, we couldn't believe it. So we were a pain in the ass to them. Okay, now this is probably from Blue Beach. I can't tell for sure. But that's the one farthest from, no, this might be where the 5th Division was. But nobody knew what anything, you know, I couldn't tell one from the other. I couldn't even tell I could tell the tanks once I got close enough. Ours had wood sponsons on them, so they couldn't put magnetic mines. They'd run into them on Saipan and Tinian. Yeah, that's probably the same guy, probably the same footage. You know, once you got it, you use it. But we went in, and the horizon was completely ringed with ships. And then when we left the 4th Division, we loaded up, and we looked around for the other ships, and there were 3, not very big, and that was it. So, yeah, here's this bunch of old guys and a few women. Some of them not too short, not too young. Yeah, we're all kind of long in the tooth. And my roommate said, we put a lot of ghosts to bed. You know, we realized that, yes, it was that lousy. Yes, well, I think all of us had volunteered. I don't know, there might have been a few guys who were drafted, but most of us wanted to be in on this. And we were there because we volunteered. We didn't get hit, that's all. So we came back because we didn't get hit. And one or two of the guys talked about feeling like cowards and ducking, but obviously they didn't. And so we went back to hell. And we looked around and we said, damn, it really was that bad. It really was that miserable. And we really were getting our butts handed to us. And you can see how genteel we all are. You notice that there aren't too many beards because most of us were so damn young that we really didn't grow much in the way of beards in a couple of weeks. And there being no place to stack stuff, it was all there. And after a while, yes, they did blow up the munition dump. And all of our hay, well, my hole caved in. So, but, and this is really just the same as the front. The front is 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away, and the beach was getting hit constantly. So these guys who look like work details are right up there. Okay, now the headquarters, you might see a couple of officers, and they'll be clean, and they'll have names. The rest of us didn't have names in any of this. So there was one big blasted bunker, And they took that over first for a command post and then for a field hospital. And that's also where they questioned the Japanese prisoners. Now, they got only a couple because the Japanese fought to the death. So the only ones we got were so beat up that they didn't know which end was up. And they had never been told they could be captured. And if they were told they would be killed immediately. And they'd have a team that would interrogate them, and I got to wander in and watch again. Intelligence spec number. I could walk any place I wanted, including a beautiful beach like this. And they had two American, both Army, one Nisi, Japanese-speaking first generation probably, and a very, very obviously Caucasian, tall, and they both had clean uniforms, and they had both shaved. So we could spot them from any distance. Also, they were Army uniforms. Now, these guys, we thought they had wrapped rags around themselves, but that's the Japanese underwear. And they were worth more than gold because they would tell you everything. They gave one guy a radio and sent him in to talk to the general and say, we can give you honorable terms of surrender. And he couldn't get to see the general because he was just an enlisted man. So the Japanese Army and the United States Marine Corps had that in common. You have officers' country. So now you notice at Suribachi, I don't know if you can see the flag up there now, but when it went up, they had first gone up there with pretty much the Japanese simply got out of there and went up to the other end of the island where they could continue fighting. And when they came, and that's the one that they originally set up. And one of these guys is Charles Lindbergh, who was bitter. He felt he'd been cheated out of all sorts of things by the really good, clear, wonderful pictures that the civilian photographer got. So, and it's just plain ordinary Marines, just practically perfect, you know, and you know, the Japanese general's widow is the only person who sounded as if that she really was deeply involved. And we couldn't understand what she was saying, but you could hear it. She's keening. And, okay, now, from the beach, this is the size of the flag they put up. Here's where they put up the second one. Nobody knows for sure where that first one actually was. They guess at it. Okay? And you can see, looking right on down, they were looking right down our throats. And the farthest you can see on the curve of the surf, that's the farthest invasion beach. But we looked up and we could see the flag. And if it sounds like I'm choking up, damn straight. All of a sudden, this was early on too. This was not victory. This was just, you know, a week or so into it, and we were getting hammered. We were, you know, we were advancing feet at a time, maybe. And we looked up and saw the flag, and my God. As I said till we got back, most of us had never had sex. We didn't know from nothing. But that thrill of the flag, that was up until we got home and found out about yeah, this is the back end of the island. For some reason, nobody ever thought of going around the back and seeing how the Japanese were getting in and out of their caves. But this is all dolled up now. But during the operation, yeah, they had the well, crosses or sticks, and the dog tags hung, and you hope that the dog tags match the body. And this is pretty well the 4th Division Cemetery. This is the biggest one. The 5th is about a quarter the size, but they had only 2 regiments went in. The 4th went in with everything we had. So, and of course, everybody knows that about half the guys who raised that big flag were killed later on within a couple of days. And the ones who came back to the States, at least the one guy died a drunkard's death flat on his back, vomiting and inhaling the vomit. So it wasn't victory. It was, we got this mountain and we've got the flag. And beautiful downtown Iwo Jima. So we gave it back, and it's no bargain. So, but it took a long time to realize that these were not caves, that this was an intricate system of tunnels. And we also found that the stone is so soft you could carve it with a knife. There again is probably the entrance to the hospital. Okay, and room enough for, you had to crouch a little bit. We were taller than most of the Japanese anyhow. Not all of them. Some of them were very, very large guys indeed. Again, Japan is not all one small island. And the guys from the north were, some of them, huge. And, but you can see that death is common and stinks. And for a long time, they wouldn't let the corpsmen join the Marine Corps League. And you say, hey, these are the guys with the most guts in the world. And I don't know about here, okay, but all the corpsmen that I saw picked up M1s because without that, you were a target. They also got rid of that cross on the helmet that they started out with because that made you a target. And they might not know how to fire an M1 or what to do with it or which end was which, but that's what you carried. The officers did the same thing. If they had a sidearm, they ducked it so you couldn't see it, and they carried an M1. Because anything different, you carrying a carbine, you looked at, you were a better target. And we realized after a while that we had people in all of those, which afterwards all of those openings, waiting to see who it was worth killing, see who it was worth taking a hit to get. And when the first planes landed, we stared at the guys because, first of all, most of the fighter pilots were not too big, and they were walking along with their parachutes bumping them on the butt, and they all had clean uniforms, and they were clean, and they were shaven, but mostly they were clean. I bet you they didn't even smell bad. And we sure did. We had one change of skivvies, and most of us had 2 canteens. And the water was in short supply because they had trouble getting it in, so they'd take the jerry cans and toss them in the surf. Guys would wade out and get them because the ships would just broach up on the shore. So then they had water in those Lister bags, which was undrinkable at best, but you'd gag it down. So we had not even enough to drink, so certainly you couldn't wash anything. And we stunk. I came out with nothing worse than ringworm, but the ringworm was about the size of the palm of your hand, and it was eating my crotch out. And I was a very fortunate guy. One of the guys found a corpse, a Marine, who had just come in and got killed right away. And he said that he undressed this guy and put all the clean clothes on himself and then redressed him in his old filthy crummy, and has felt both grateful to the guy and guilty about it forever. But we were rotting. Everything was shot. And you wear your clothes for 6 weeks straight, and they're not in the best of shape. So, and they started bringing in DC-3s, so what they called them then. But they had a name for them. But they would load them and get the badly wounded out to Guam. We came in with 2 hospital ships, and that couldn't handle the first day's casualty. And there was much, much more to come. So if this was a walk in the park, I don't want to walk like that, and I don't ever want to see a park like this. Okay? And this is just about the best it got, what you're seeing right here. And, by this time there weren't too many bodies face down in the sand. They were picking them up. And well, after 6 weeks of, again, having our head or whatever part you want to call handed to us, and we left and the horizon was clear. And we had taken it. The Army came in and took over. And you can see the only way you could really move anything was on these. These are the mats for airstrips. They locked together, and okay. And here, after a while, they weren't leaving it out in the open to be blown up. So we went in, a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids, and just kept on going. And we had an island that couldn't be taken, and took it. And we had more than you could stand, and we stood it. And the guys who cracked, nobody got too bent out of shape about it. They just realized that they were finished. They were done. Okay? And for a little while, I was with a Protestant chaplain who I tried to look up, Earl Dean Sneary, so if anybody ever hears this, I would like to run into you. I've tried looking you up on Google, but that son of a gun had a guitar. Okay, this is like D6, D5 maybe. He's up by the airfield, and this guy had a guitar. And he would go down to the beach when they were bringing in these little tiny bottles of brandy, and he would fill his pockets with them because you couldn't tell his rate, because the officers wore their insignia inside their collar. You could just see the pin showing. And they didn't know he was a chaplain, so he would pick up lots and lots of little bottles of brandy, and then he would go and visit the wounded, and he would check with the corpsmen, not with the doctors, with the corpsmen, and say, who could use a drop? And the ones who it was okay, he would say, bless you, my son, and I don't think that man ever took a drop of it himself, but he would go and do bless you, my son. He's a Protestant chaplain, and as he said, he liked to do the Jewish service because he could sing. All right? So Earl Dean Sneary, if anybody knows about him, give him my best. And that's the name of that tune.